Welcome to section 7 of Data Network Security 1. In this section, we'll be talking about server misconfiguration. At the end of this session, students should be able to explain what server misconfiguration is, list the types of vulnerabilities that falls in this category, and outline how to prevent this type of attacks, and finally exploit server misconfiguration within the altoromutual.com. What is server misconfiguration? Security misconfiguration can occur within all components of the web application provision. This includes the platform, which is operating systems, web servers, databases, and even frameworks. Now, common issues include leaving unnecessary services running if they are not needed, having default administrator accounts, credentials also active, and even revealing directory listing and files online. Now, what the hackers even like the most is the mishandling of errors, how our errors are handled. Now, what are the implications of server misconfiguration? Now, here, server misconfigurations can cause information disclosure, and that can lead or aid an attacker to better understand how your application works. And with that, you are vulnerable to the attacker. The attacker can attack at any time. Now, this can aid an attacker also in their try and error approach, trying passwords and credentials a number of times. And this allows them to customize injection. We spoke about SQL injection. So it helps them customize injection commands and scripts. And once they do that, they are successful. Now, are we vulnerable to security misconfiguration? How can we know that? Now, these are some questions you can ask. Is your software out of date? So we are talking about your operating systems, your web application server, database management systems, all applications, or even sometimes your code libraries. Are they out of date? Are any unnecessary servers or services running on your system? So are some ports open? Are some pages open? Are some accounts active? Are some privileges being left? Are default accounts and their passwords still enabled and unchanged? These are some things that once they are left unattended to, results into security misconfiguration or server misconfiguration. Now, these are some types of vulnerabilities or some categories of vulnerabilities that are related to server misconfiguration. The first is application errors. Now, often this is caused by forging a request that contains parameter values other than the ones expected by the application. Now, here you see the attacker can gain useful information from the applications or from the application's response to this request, which information may be exploited to locate application weaknesses. Another cause of vital information being revealed in error, because once the error message comes and contains very vital or sensitive information, the attacker is able to sniff those information out and use it against the user. And this is when the scripting engine or web server or database are misconfigured. So here are some of typical attack scenarios with regards to application errors. So removing parameters, set parameter values to null, append some strings to a numeric parameter values. These are just by a few. So we realize that an error has occurred, and that error has exposed the username and the password. So once these things are not taken care of, they cause server or they lead to server misconfiguration. How do we prevent application errors? There are a few preventive measures, and I'll ask you to take your time to go through them. We have checking incoming requests for the presence of all expected parameters and values. we need to enforce values in their expected range and types. Do not output debugging error messages and exceptions in a production environment. So these error messages should be encoded as much as possible. Another type of vulnerability we want to talk about is directory listings. Now, typically web servers are usually configured to disallow listings of directories. We are talking about in your directory file which folders are visible. So, like I said, web servers are now being configured to disallow listings of directories which contain scripts and textual content. Now, if a web server was configured improperly, then it's possible to retrieve a directory listing by just sending a request for a specific directory, and you can reference that by using the name if you know the name of that directory. Now, another possible way to acquire directory listing is by exploiting specific issues in web servers. And here the URL trickery attacks or malformed HTTP requests which force the web server to return a directory listing is used. So here is an example. With the first browser, we see that we have altoro.com/pr/ and that gives us some listings. Now, once the attacker knows that after a slash I can do bank, then once the attacker puts that URL there, it gives it listings of almost access to all bank details or bank files. And once the attacker has knowledge of these listings, then they can carry out their attacks on the site. How do we prevent directory listings? We need to configure the web server to deny listings of directories. We can also download specific security patches according to any issue we are facing with regards to the web server or web application. Then some of the known directory listings issues are listed in the references field of the advisory. Once we have that, we can be able to prevent directory listings. Now, another one is application test scripts and default files. Now, a common user can access certain pages on a site through simple surfing. So I'll just surf the net and I can just get access to some common pages. Now, an attacker may be able to access these pages by just guessing their names. So for example, I have test.php or index.php or text.html. Once I know these names, I can easily get into the system of the user. We'll see how that is done. Now, sometimes developers forget to remove certain debugging or test pages from production environment. An example is the altoromutual.com/test.aspx. Now, once that is activated, we see that it provides some basic knowledge of the website, right? So now we can try to prevent server misconfiguration in general. One thing we can look at is utilize good configuration management practices, which is key, which all management should be able to do. We need to introduce a process for keeping abreast of and deploying all new software. So if a software needs an update or a patch update, that should be done in a timely manner. Now, we should employ a strong application architecture that promotes or provides effective, secure separation between components. We can also run scans and conduct audits periodically, and this can help detect future misconfiguration or misplacing patches. So once you're able to go through lab 5, which is server misconfiguration, you should be able to understand what goes on in having vulnerabilities as far as server misconfiguration is concerned. So visit the Sakai page or Sakai platform to get a hands-on training on server misconfiguration. So in summary, we've been talking about what constitutes or consists of a server misconfiguration the different types of vulnerabilities that falls in this category, some tips on how to prevent these types of attacks, and also attacks exploits that can expose server misconfiguration using the altoromutual.com. This will bring us to the end of section 7, and I'm looking forward to seeing section 8.